Hi, I'm Revis, and today I will be talking about the Loki season, which is coming to Marvel Snap on September 4th. For this season, I will be giving away 10 season passes, so 5 of those will be via Twitter, which I'll link the description of how to apply for that. Or enter that giveaway below, and then the other 5 will be for YouTube. So in order for that, you just have to be subscribed, like this video, comment what you're looking forward to in the next season. So yeah, thanks to Second Dinner and Marvel Snap for providing these codes so that you guys can get to enjoy the next season for free. But yeah, that being said, the main purpose of today's video is to look into the newly announced cards and for me to give my opinions on these. Will they be meta relevant? Will they be fun? That kind of stuff. I think I was pretty on point last season. Outside of maybe the meta relevance of Legion, I thought that he was going to be a lot of fun, but I wasn't necessarily certain how prevalent he would be. But yeah, let's just start. Let's just go right into it. So first up, we have Loki. This is the season pass card for the season. He is a 3/5 on reveal. Replace your hand with cards from your opponent's starting deck. Give them -1 cost, right? So at a glance, seems like kind of a random high rolly card. Fits well into these sort of Dino collector decks, right? You're gonna add all these cards to your hand. They're going to buff up the collector. It synergizes in general with having a big hand, right? The developers have said that each card will be unique and from the original starting deck, which means you can't get Thanos Stones. You can't get the high Evo cards with the high Evo ability, so you'll just be getting vanilla cards. And yeah, giving them all one cost cards, pretty solid effect. It also synergizes with Quinjet, right? So since these aren't starting in your deck, you'll get them for 2 costs shorter with Quinjet. Overall, seems like a reasonable card for these types of decks, right? Where you're going to be playing out lots of these like Agent 13, Sentinels, adding stuff to your hand already, and then you can Loki and maybe change them into something more useful. How meta relevant this will be, I think, is really dependent on what decks people are running, right? So if you are running into more combo heavy decks, Hela, Galactus, those types of things, he's going to be a lot worse because you're more likely not to pull those parts of the combo, or like not to be able to use the combo as effectively, right? What's the use as a Hela deck if you don't get Hela, or if you get Hela with no discards, that kind of stuff, right? But if the meta favors more tech kind of decks like Sarah Control and Zabu Darkhawk, this is very, very strong, right? Because now all of a sudden you're playing with a Sarah decrease, and maybe you get to play out a Sarah, and all of a sudden you get twice the Sarah in your deck, and then it's just a ridiculously strong card. I would say it kind of has anti-synergy with Devil Dinosaur because of the fact that you'll be wanting to play out all these cards, and usually they're not going to be refilling your own hand. But yeah, on the fun scale, I think this is going to be a really, really fun card. On the power scale, it's hard to say. Like I said, it's going to really depend on what your opponent is playing, how much synergy you can combo with that. But at the end of the day, 3/5 isn't like premium stats, so it's going to fit into these decks right away, and maybe you just hold it if you don't want to steal your opponent's deck, right? So definitely a fun one to pick up, and season pass is like the most worth getting, so it should be a really interesting card, right? It's a very new kind of effect that if you like these steal your opponent's deck kind of thing, it's going to be great. All right, let's go into one of the first releases for this month. This is data mined to be a Series 5 card, Alioth. This is a 6/5 on reveal. Destroy all enemy cards played here this turn, including unrevealed cards. This means that your opponent's on reveals won't go off. So if you manage to have priority and guess where your opponent's going to play a Doctor Doom on the last turn, they don't even get the Doom bots. At a glance, seems like a powerful card. It's something that was data mined earlier at a 5/5. It's definitely a lot stronger at that stat line, especially in Destroy decks where you could follow it up later with Death or Null. At 6/5, it definitely seems like something that you need to ramp out early. Otherwise, on the last turn, you're kind of just guessing where your opponent's going to play. And if you guess correctly, it's going to feel great. And if you guess wrong, it's just going to be pretty bad, right? It's going to be a 6/5 that does nothing, which is kind of similar to Negasonic. It's a big Negasonic. When it works, it's going to work really well. If someone could find a deck to force your opponent to play into a specific lane where you can have priority, will definitely perform a lot stronger. It kind of reminds me of like the old Spider-Man kind of effect, where it's like, yeah, if you can force your opponent into that one lane, it's going to feel super oppressive, right? It's scary if this becomes a Galactus card, right? You play Galactus, if you're able to maintain that priority, there's nothing your opponent can do to stop it, right? So this definitely slots right into Galactus, and if that's something that you like to play, this might be pretty oppressive in that shell, right? That's where I see it from a competitive standpoint, going straight into. Otherwise, I think it's fairly weak outside of a Galactus style of deck where you're forcing your opponent to play into one lane. So yeah, whether or not Galactus is strong enough to be played with just this edition, right? The hard part now is getting the Galactus to go off. Is a great question on this card's viability. All right, next we will go into probably the most powerful card announced this cycle, and this is Mobius M. Mobius. He is a 2/3 ongoing. Your cost can't be increased, and your opponent's cost can't be reduced. All right, so at a glance, first things that you can probably see this affecting are Zabu, Sarah, and Mr. Negative, right? All of a sudden, this is just a hard counter to those decks where your opponent's trying to reduce the cost of their cards and just dump a bunch on the last turn. Just playing Mobius all of a sudden doesn't matter, as well as ignoring Iceman and Icebox, as well as Dream Dimension, your cards aren't going to increase. The more powerful interaction, which the devs recently confirmed, is that Wave interacts beneficially for you with Mobius, which means when you wave with Mobius on the board, your cards that cost 4 or more will be reduced to 4, and your cards that cost 4 or less will remain at their base cost. While for your opponent, their cards will cost 6 that cost 4 or more will stay at 4 or more, which means they have to still play 6 cost or whatever, and everything else that's lower than 4 will be increased to 4, which means if you play Wave towards the last turns, you can play out multiple cards. You can play out like a Doctor Doom and a Silk on the last turn if you Wave, while your opponent can just play a singular card. There's a lot of other interesting combos with this as well. So one of the things you'll see a lot of people talk about is that, like, oh yeah, you can play multiple cards. Maybe you can play out 6 1-drops with after a Wave turn, while your opponent just could sit there and play a 4-cost like 2-drop or something. Maybe that's all they have, right? There's a lot of brutal combos, I think, with Wave even earlier in the game than what other people are saying. If you go Mobius into Wave, you can curve out a 6 cost while your opponent can play at highest cost of 4 cost on turn 4. You could go Mobius, Wave into Galactus, and if your opponent doesn't have a 4 cost that can contest your Galactus, they're just going to be pretty sad. And that kind of stuff, like you can follow with a Doctor Doom on turn 4 while your opponent just can't keep up, right? Doctor Doom into Absorbing Man. In ramp decks, all of a sudden you're going to be playing Wave into like Odin and playing out multiple cards. There might be some like interesting ramp where you also have like 2s and 1s that that you got to play alongside them beneficially. Overall, this seems like a really, really strong card, to the point that like the only counter to him is another Mobius, right? So if the devs also confirm this, if you have another Mobius, they cancel out in a way that everything will just cost its original cost. Wave's not going to do anything. any kind of cost reduction or increased effect won't do anything. This is definitely a meta warping card. It's very hard to say what's gonna go on top in this situation, right? He is a 2 that is very powerful to be played on 2. He's very powerful to be played on turn 5 of wave. If your opponent's not expecting it, it's gonna cause a flip of it's a scary card. The way it works, I would be shocked if he stays the same cost and power, right? 2/3 is basically close to premium. That's not premium stats, but with a beneficial effect, it's premium, right? It's like an armor. You're never unhappy to have an armor in your deck because it does have a very solid beneficial effect in many matchups. And yeah, it's just a scary card to have around. Like I said, all these combos, I'm sure there's going to be like 10 more that I think of after this video and that people will list in the comments. Definitely let me know if you have any sneaky stuff that you can do there, but he's gonna be very powerful. Probably like one of the most powerful since release Sabu. Thankfully he is data mined to be Series 4, so hopefully more people can get a hand on him. Alright, lastly but not leastly, we have Ravonna Renslayer. She is a 3/3. Ongoing, your cards with 1 or less power cost 1 less, minimum 1, right? So at a glance, this is a interesting card, right? I believe they probably have to keep her at 3 cost because of the fact that you could otherwise ramp up Mr. Negative, right? And Mr. Negative deck, she could fit in pretty well, assuming that you didn't get your Mr. Negative off because you're already running a lot of cards that cost pretty cheap. She's directly countered by Mobius, interestingly enough. You could do Iron Man combos, right? Iron Man Mystique. She combos with Darkhawk, right? You can make that cheaper. There's definitely some interesting build arounds. Maybe you can play Cerebro Mystique for pretty cheap on the last turn. But there's not too many cards outside of like Cerebro, Darkhawk, and Iron Man that you really want her with currently. She does feel pretty powerful in those shells, or having a 3 cost Sarah for some of your cards. If you build your deck, it can be all of your cards maybe. It's a very strong effect. But because of cards like Mobius and other things that can disrupt this, definitely not going to be as meta warping, but should still be relatively powerful. Something to experiment with. Definitely an interesting card, even if it's not meta shaking. All right, and then I think I'll just briefly go over the spotlights for this month and just my thoughts on whether or not you should be getting them. I'm really excited for these cards. These are very interesting. So let's see if we can actually pull these, right? So in the first week when Loki comes out, we will be having a spotlight with Ghost Spider, Jeff, and Null. This is the first spotlight with Jeff, so if you don't own Jeff, this is probably a really good week to pull. Otherwise, I would not really consider pulling for the other 2. If you're a fan of Destroy, maybe it's worthwhile pulling for the Null. He's pretty much a staple into most of your Destroy decks. Ghost Spider is pretty much not played at all, even in the move style shells. So unless you're missing one of Jeff or Null, probably not a week you want to pull. Yeah, that's my thoughts there. Solid week because Jeff isn't it. And if you don't own Jeff, you probably want to pull for Jeff. He goes into almost every deck. The follow-up week, we have the Alioth week, right? So this is new card, probably the second strongest out of the releases, being Mobius and Ravonna and Alioth, coming out with Snowguard and Hitmonkey, which both pretty much see minimal play currently, so pretty weak spotlight. Hitmonkey only sees play in Sarah control. It got phased completely out of bounds since the nerf. Snowguard has pretty much seen no play since her release. I will say I would be surprised if they don't give her some sort of buff or rework on her ability. Some of the devs have hinted at that since so many people have been asking for it because she is so weak. If she is buffed in some way that makes her better, maybe it's more of a consideration. overall, Alioth is pretty weak seeming. If you're not a Galactus player, so overall this seems like not really a good week to pull. But it is worth saying that Alioth is a Series 5 card, most likely. So in general, if you are looking to be collection complete, you should be opening these for Series 5 cards. But yeah, overall, this is definitely one of the weaker weeks. Then we have the Ravonna Renslayer week. She comes alongside Zabu and Jean. This is a kind of middling spotlight week. Zabu definitely very strong, staple into many decks. Thing is, the next week it gets completely canceled by Mobius. Zabu also got a lot weaker with the recent buff to Rock Slide, which makes it cost 3 without Zabu. Jean scenes minimal play. I like her a lot in the move shells with Silk and potentially Wave or the Kitty Pride, but she doesn't really see meta dominance. Ravonna, I think, will follow a similar trend where she doesn't really see meta dominance. So unless you don't own Zabu, probably not a good week. Lastly, we have the week with Mobius. This is only data mined with 2 things, so Mobius is definitely very, very strong. Probably worth getting him. If you have the tokens and he turns out to be Series 4, probably worth using the tokens, because already I'm looking at the one card that's data mined to be with him, and it's Kang. Kang is pretty much one of the worst cards in Marvel Snap, I would say, next to Howard the Duck. He has 0 meta relevance. Pretty much only seen some play in the Alex Kosia's Infinite, like double up She-Hulk build. Outside of that, I don't think it's seen any play. And that being said, yeah, no matter what the third card is, unless it's something super meta relevant, probably not worth opening, probably just worth spending tokens. That being said, none of these spotlight weeks are announced, so these are definitely very subject to change. In the past, I haven't really changed much with them. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this review of the upcoming cards and the spotlights. Let me know what you think. Be sure to subscribe and like the video to enter the raffle, as well as comment down below what you're looking forward to most next season. And I will catch you in the next one. Peace.